Discrimination exposed. Black CEO's amazing response after being ejected from VIP seat. You won. Jordan Lawson adjusted his cufflinks, taking a deep breath as he entered the venue, hyper-aware of the stares and whispers that trailed his every step. The air buzzed with anticipation, but the shiny veneer of the tech conference felt like a facade to him, polished yet brittle. He took his seat at the VIP table, but the moment was soured as he saw security headed his way, a man in a sharp suit and an expression of fading authority. "Excuse me, sir," the man said, an edge of condescension in his voice. "This seat is reserved." Jordan felt his pulse quicken, confusion clawing at him as he resisted the urge to snap back. Was this really happening? A pang of humiliation washed over him. Could it be that the color of his skin was overshadowing his accomplishments? A bitter thought crept in. Years of hard work, building his tech startup from the ground up, with the belief that determination and merit alone would secure his place among greatness. Was it all for nothing? He felt the shadow of his mother's sacrifices loom large, the echoes of her relentless spirit battling against the suffocating grip of doubt that threatened to swallow him whole. As he was ejected from the table, a tidal wave of emotions swelled within him. Righteous anger mingled with an aching sense of inadequacy. How could he, a thriving CEO, be mistaken for an imposter among his peers? The very air around him felt charged with disbelief and rage. Every unjust glance he received only magnified his internal turmoil. He was a living testament to the American dream, yet here he was, thrust back into the stereotype of being overlooked and undervalued. Before he could retreat into himself completely, Jordan felt an unexpected rush. It was time to turn humiliation into purpose. With a determination forged from years of struggle, he walked toward the stage to address the audience. Before he could process the gravity of the moment, he spoke from the heart, igniting in himself a fire born of resilience and ambition. "Before we continue," he began, forcing himself to meet the intrigued eyes of the crowd, "I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. It really makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." The energy shifted. Every eye was now riveted on him, the air rippling with intensity. Jordan drew upon his legacy of family activism, weaving personal stories into his vehement discourse against the injustices he'd faced. He spoke of a vision for true equality within corporate America, where representation wasn't merely a buzzword, but a reality. Yet amidst the applause, a quiet, nagging fear tinged his hope. What if today was simply a fleeting moment, lost in the chaos of corporate politics? As he descended from the podium, the satisfaction of igniting a conversation fell heavy with uncertainty. Would his words elicit real change, or was this just another instance of speaking into the void? Jordan's heart raced, brimming with anger and determination, knowing he had cast a light on a darkness that had long been ignored. However, lingering beneath the surface were the disquieting questions. Had he truly broken the mold, or was he merely a voice echoing into a chasm, with the same oppressive structures still firmly in place? The weight of that uncertainty pressed against him as he moved through the room, the stakes now higher than ever. Jordan stepped down from the stage, the remnants of adrenaline coursing through him. As applause lingered in the air, he couldn't shake off the feeling that it was too easy to disappear back into the shadows, back into disbelief. The moment felt pivotal, a crossroads that would dictate the trajectory of not just his career but also his very identity as a leader. Surrounded by a sea of faces, half skeptical, half supportive, he felt the weight of leadership pressing down on his shoulders. He made his way toward the fringes of the crowd, where disjointed conversations blossomed like wildflowers in the cracks of pavement. Bystanders whispered about his speech, their words bleeding into one another, while others appeared indifferent, their attention elsewhere. Pondering the seeming dichotomy of reception, Jordan questioned how genuine the applause had been. Did they appreciate his words, or were they merely applauding the spectacle of a black CEO bravely standing against the odds? A soft voice broke through his thoughts. "That was inspiring," it said, belonging to a young woman no older than 25, her eyes glimmering with admiration. "You have no idea how much it meant to us to hear that." Her earnestness struck a note in Jordan's heart. Here was someone who resonated with his struggle, someone who might actually understand the nuances of his journey. "Thank you," he replied, his voice softer, a stark contrast to the fervor he had just exhibited. "But inspiring isn't enough. I need action, and so do you." Had he unwittingly opened up a dialogue that could build bridges rather than just highlight divides? Her gaze turned intense, aligning with the ferocity he felt inside. "I want to help. We can't just talk about it. We need to do something," she urged. Jordan felt his spirit lift slightly. That was the essence of leadership he had craved. Action, passion. He recognized a familiar determination reflected back at him. "What's your name?" he asked, eager to connect, to find allies in this fight. "Layla," she responded, her voice unwavering. "If you're planning to push for systemic change, I want to be involved. I know things, data analysis, social media strategy. I can help make our voices heard." A surge of resolve filled him. Here was an opportunity to not only amplify his message, but also empower those willing to join him. "Let's meet tomorrow," he proposed impulsively, picturing the possibilities that lay ahead of them, a strategic plan igniting amidst uncertainty. But somewhere at the back of his mind, doubt flickered like an unwelcome candle. As Layla nodded, her enthusiasm contagious, Jordan's mind raced. What responsibilities would he inherit by pursuing this path? What sacrifices awaited him? Could he mold this fledgling partnership into a potent force for change, or would colliding priorities ultimately consume him? Would he be able to navigate the corporate landscape while demanding reparative justice? As they exchanged contact information, the buzz of conversation enveloped them once more. The reality of the fight ahead pressed against him, but with the ember of newfound purpose ignited within, the fear of the unknown felt less paralyzing and more like a beckoning challenge. "Remember," Jordan cautioned, "this isn't just about words or good intentions. It's about confronting structures that have been in place for far too long. Are you ready for that?" "I wouldn't be here if I wasn't," she shot back with a fiery grin. With their resolve aligning, Jordan felt a burgeoning sense of direction. It was time to turn that flicker of energy into a blinding light. But doing so would require courage, unlike anything he had known before. As the day waned, he glanced back at the stage that had witnessed his declaration, feeling an unexpected sense of clarity. The weight of leadership was heavier than before, but Jordan was unwilling to shy away from it. The real challenge loomed on the horizon, enduring the scrutiny, navigating the inevitable backlash, and most importantly, remaining true to himself amidst the chaos. He hadn't just ignited a moment, but a movement, and as he prepared for the next steps, he could feel the faint tremors of change gathering on the wind. The question now lingered ominously. Was he truly ready to confront the powerful forces that had sought to undermine him, and at what cost? Jordan awoke the next morning to an unexpected sense of clarity, mixed with a frail undertone of trepidation. The thoughts from last night spun in a whirlwind. What had begun as a spontaneous declaration on stage had morphed into a responsibility he never anticipated. As he glanced in the mirror, he saw not just the CEO, but a man shaped by struggle, decisions, and the relentless pursuit of authenticity. Today would be decisive, tinged with the promise of camaraderie through action. A flurry of emails awaited him, the volume of which he hadn't seen in weeks. Some focused on quarterly reports, others reacted to his statement from last night. But one stood out, an email from Layla confirming their first meeting. The anticipation was almost tactile, a mixture of eagerness and dread. Could he manage the expectations of this partnership? Did he have the capacity to be both mentor and mentee? He brewed a strong cup of coffee, its bitterness grounding him, forcing him to confront the questions swirling in his mind. Could he lead this initiative effectively without losing connection to the people involved? He envisioned Layla, energized and driven as a force that could spark real change. But would she expect him to be the ultimate authority, or would this be a collaborative effort? The balance between leading and collaborating weighed heavy. When Jordan arrived at the cafe, the familiar clamor of morning chatter soon dissolved into white noise. He spotted Layla seated at a corner table, her focused gaze glued to a notepad filled with scribbles and figures. The moment their eyes met, a tangible understanding flickered between them, an unspoken acknowledgement that both had taken a leap into the unknown together. "Sorry I'm late," he said, sliding into the seat opposite her. He hesitated, grappling with how to articulate his thoughts. "I guess I've been trying to figure out what this all means." Layla smiled, an easy, disarming smile. "It means we're embarking on something important. Let's focus on what we can do, not just what we're feeling or fearing." She laid out an initial strategy, filled with social media engagements and outreach, direct, confrontational, and eminently practical. Her plan resonated with him, yet he couldn't shake the feeling of vulnerability accompanying their endeavor. As her ideas poured forth, Jordan felt the weight of doubt creep back in, like an unwelcome guest. What if he led them astray? What if his fears of backlash stunted their growth? The intricacies of corporate politics loomed large in his mind, and he struggled with the potential ramifications of their actions. "Layla," he interrupted, raising his hand, "what if we take a more cautious approach, maybe start small before going all in?" The moment the words left his mouth, he recognized them as wallpapering his fears with justifications. "Caution is great, but what we need now is an unflinching stance. People need to see that we're serious." "We can't hide," she replied, her confidence challenging his reservations. Straightening in his chair, he realized she was right. Their purpose demanded audacity. Yet still, he wavered. The unease settled within him like a stone, burdening his thoughts. What sacrifices would their pursuit entail? How would he handle the repercussions from senior management? The idea of confrontation started to transform from a mere strategic tactic into a possibility that terrified him. What if the very act of standing up for justice cost him his career? As they delved deeper into planning, outlining roles and tasks, he saw a flicker of something in Layla's eyes, commitment and, perhaps more importantly, belief. In that moment, Jordan felt a surge of determination. It was time to embrace the potential and shed the weight of his fears. They were not simply fighting against oppression, they were illuminating a path for others to follow. Layla leaned in, her tone changing, more serious. "Jordan, remember, we can't let fear close our minds. We must challenge the structures that oppose us. What's at stake is bigger than us." Her words crystallized something in him. He wasn't just a voice. He had power, not just inherent authority, but the authority to influence change. Perhaps today would mark the beginning of his evolution, from a reactive leader to a proactive force. As he considered her statement, the duality of purpose settled within him. Yes, there would be risks. Yes, there would be adversity. But this was about agency, about confronting challenges head-on. Before they concluded their meeting, Layla reached across the table. "Let's commit. We won't back down, no matter what the fallout may be." The words echoed in his mind long after their meeting ended, solidifying his resolve. Jordan left the cafe, a newfound determination swinging at his heels. But as he stepped into the uncertainty of the corporate world again, A nagging thought resurfaced. Could he truly withstand the forces aligned against him? That question loomed darkly as he prepared to face whatever hurdles lay ahead. The time had come to step from behind the veil. The sun beat down mercilessly as Jordan made his way back to the office, the weight of his resolve pressing against him with each determined step. The thrill of possibility was a double-edged sword, sharp with potential success, but equally dangerous with the prospect of failure. His heart raced like a piston, propelling him forward into a turmoil of uncertainty. He entered the building, nodding to colleagues who greeted him with weary smiles, unaware of the storm brewing within him. As he approached his office, he caught sight of his reflection in the glass panels. The man staring back was one he thought he knew, yet now felt alien. Behind the confident facade, anxiety bubbled beneath the surface, threatening to engulf him. Once inside his office, he closed the door, seeking the sanctuary of solitude. Leaning back in his chair, he allowed himself a moment to breathe deeply, filling his lungs with the sterile air of corporate normalcy. But the clarity from his meeting with Layla gnawed at him, each thought intertwining with doubt. What if he was merely perceiving courage as a fleeting emotion instead of a sustained conviction? Was he ready to face not just the outer machinations of corporate structure, but the inner battle within him that held potential consequences? As the afternoon dragged on, Jordan reviewed the data and reports laid before him, attempting to distract himself from the voice that persistently echoed his insecurities. The numbers told one story, profits soaring, projections bright, while an inner narrative started to shape a very different reality. The thought of a rousing speech, of defiance against his naysayers, felt increasingly like standing at the edge of a cliff, staring into the abyss below. The office buzzed around him, yet he felt distanced from it. When he eventually garnered the courage to stand up and lead a meeting, his palms were sweaty against the polished wooden table. He was more on edge than he'd ever felt presenting to the board. Silence hung in the air as he cleared his throat, gathering the fragments of his newfound ambition. "Today we redefine our objectives," he began, voice steady, yet laced with an urgency that surprised even him. "We commit to actions that align with our principles, not solely our profits. It's time we acknowledge the responsibilities we bear, not just in numbers, but in how we engage with our community and our people." A few nods of agreement emerged, but skepticism lingered like a shadow. He could almost taste the tension. One senior board member leaned back, arms crossed, studying him intently, as if assessing a challenger in a game of chess. "Jordan," he interjected, tone laced with condescension, "are you suggesting that we risk our business interests for a social experiment? This could jeopardize everything we've worked for." The words stung, and Jordan felt his heart race. This was the moment his fears dabbled with reality. Was he really willing to sacrifice everything? What good is success if it lacks integrity? We can lead with purpose and profitability hand in hand. Layla and I have started a conversation about actionable change within our organization. A ripple of murmurs swept through the room, signaling a mix of intrigue and concern. He could feel their eyes tracing back to him, searching for cracks in his confidence. The imposing challenge ahead suddenly felt fortified. This was more than confronting a board. It was his personal evolution on display, a test of his resolve. He plunged deeper into the discourse, filling the silence left by hesitation with a powerful vision of their future that harmonized profitability with principle. As he articulated the need for an authentic culture, he started to notice the board members shift slightly, leaning in, curiosity flickering behind their protective facades. However, the specter of backlash loomed as he considered the implications of speaking so candidly. Would they react defensively? The last thing he needed was favor turning to disdain. But as he spoke, he unearthed a hidden ally within him, an urgency forged by a will to act, nurtured by Layla's belief in what they could achieve. Closing his presentation, Jordan felt a strange mix of exhilaration and dread. Regardless of the outcome, he had confronted the structures that imprisoned not only him, but his peers. The words hung heavily in the air as he left the meeting room, a sense of agency blossoming, however tentative. As he settled back into his office, adrenaline still coursing through him, Jordan understood the nature of sacrifice. It demanded constant reckoning. He could no longer ignore the voices clamoring for change inside and outside of his mind. He reached for his phone, fingertips hovering over Layla's contact, hesitating before pressing call. His heart raced with possibility. He needed to reconvene. Their mission had only just begun, and a ripple of sincerity urged him forward. But as he waited, the walls around him began to close in with the weight of further contemplation. Could he maintain this momentum, or would he fold when push came to shove? A crackling voice on the other end shattered his thoughts. "Jordan, we have a problem. The board is getting backlash already." The moment of truth approached, and he realized this was just the beginning of the confrontation he had dreaded. He was not merely standing on the edge, he was about to plunge into the depths of an evolving struggle, and there was no turning back now. The tension in Jordan's office felt crushing, a physical weight stifling his breath. He placed the phone down, the ripple of Layla's urgency throbbing in his mind. Backlash was an inevitable outcome, but its reality pressed on his chest like a vice. The board's resistance didn't just threaten their initiative, it signaled a deeper chasm between vision and reality within the corporation. He understood that this was a test, one that would define him as a leader. He paced the confines of his office, each step a push against the pillar of self-doubt rising within him. Was he truly prepared to champion this cause, or was he simply grasping at straws? It was one thing to speak of change, it was another to fight for it in the face of adversity. Jordan leaned against his desk, surveying the reports scattered ominously across the surface. Their charts and figures were a comfortable narrative, but the upheaval he faced now was raw and messy. Layla had spoken of a revolution, of authentic engagement that would elevate the culture. Yet the corporate world, in its foundational structures, breathed a different ethos, one that revered stability over transformation. The ringing of his phone sliced through his turbulent thoughts. A text from Layla flickered across the screen. "We need to prepare for pushback. Call me." The simplicity of her words reflected a stark reminder of their mission. Yet, beneath the clarity of her resolve, doubt whispered, clawing at his courage to act. A moment's hesitation swallowed him. He combed through scenarios in silence. What if the board refused to budge? What if their meeting struck uncertainty instead of alliance? What if the stillness of his resolve fractured under scrutiny? Each question morphed into a suffocating shadow, casting doubt over his intentions. Jordan picked up his phone and called Layla, his pulse quickening in tandem with the ringing sound. When she answered, urgency colored her voice. "Jordan, did you hear the latest? They're spreading rumors that this initiative will cost us clients." He clenched the phone tighter, feeling the surge of indignation rise. "They're not even listening. We haven't presented the full benefits yet." "That's why we need to control the narrative," she insisted, her tone anchoring him. "Let's gather testimonials from team members, showcase the data that supports our vision. If we can present a united front, we'll have leverage." Each suggestion she made pulled him further into focus. The fatigue from earlier waned, replaced with a renewed sense of purpose. "You're right. We can make this movement visible. We have to showcase the potential, both from within the team and in the community we serve." As they brainstormed, Jordan began to think strategically, mapping out a potential path that intertwined data with human stories. This was more than corporate strategy. This was about people investing in people. Layla's steadfast belief galvanized him, invigorating the strength he thought he'd lost. However, as he developed ideas in conversation, flashes of doubt flickered within him. A fear arose that he might not possess the capability to enact such a bold vision. Each doubt was a whisper that pierced through the euphoria of collaboration. Who was he to stand against those entrenched in tradition? But something shifted within him as their discussion continued, igniting a resolve that pushed aside doubt. If he could articulate their cause, if he could frame the conversation in terms of shared humanity rather than corporate profits, then perhaps they could tip the scales toward the possibility of change. They finalized their strategy just as curiosity began to peek through the corners of their fears, punctuated by a growing sense of urgency. "We need to move fast," Layla concluded, her tone as serious as ever. "If we don't act now, they'll set the narrative, and it will be one that dismisses our vision." Jordan hung up, battering back remnants of uncertainty. His heart thudded, a metronome of determination that began to align with his actions. He had never felt more alive nor more terrified. The stakes were soaring. This wasn't just about confronting the board anymore. It was about reshaping the entire company culture. As he steeled himself to lead this charge, another message vibrated through, momentarily startling him. It was from an anonymous source within the company, a comment that read, "A change is coming. Be ready." Was this a warning or a sign of support? The ambiguity sent a shiver through him, suggesting that the battle he was about to engage in was not solely his own, but echoed within voices across the organization. Jordan strode toward the door, energy coursing through his veins. He was a pioneer on the edge of a precipice, ready to leap into the unknown. Each step outside his office reflected not just an intention to confront opposition, but to embody the change that was necessary. In the moments leading up to the presentation of their strategy, he stood at the intersection of self-discipline and doubt. This moment was pivotal. He had to trust in the raw authenticity of their mission. He could feel the shifting tide of transformation unfolding before him, but could he ride its wave, or would he be washed ashore by the forces that sought to resist? With a deep breath, he stepped toward the conference room, determined yet anxious, ready to navigate the battle ahead, but uncertain of how it would be revealed. The conference room loomed ahead, its imposing glass walls a stark reminder of the scrutiny he would face. As Jordan approached the door, he swallowed hard, wrestling with a rush of apprehension. He could sense the eyes of the board members on him, their gazes piercing through him like arrows of expectation and skepticism. He inhaled deeply, willing the fluttering in his stomach to settle, reminding himself of the purpose that propelled him forward. Once inside, the atmosphere crackled with electricity, an amalgamation of tension and the weight of unspoken narratives. The board was gathered in a semicircle, their expressions veiled and defensive, like a fortress bracing for siege. Jordan took his place at the head of the table, heart racing but intention resolute. His thoughts trailed back to Layla's voice, a steady anchor guiding him through this maelstrom. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice steady despite the quickening beats of his heart. "I know there have been concerns about our new initiative, and I want to address them head-on." He glanced around the room, gauging reactions. Eyes narrowed in skepticism, arms crossed defensively. His self-doubt bubbled beneath the surface, but he pressed on, fueled by the belief that this moment, and the people behind the idea, meant something crucial. Change is inherently challenging, especially when the status quo has been our compass for so long. However, if we don't pivot to embrace new engagement strategies, we risk stagnation. I'm proposing a shift not only in operations, but in how we connect with our teams and clients. The sound of a throat clearing cut through his presentation. It was Mr. Dorrance, a long-time board member whose reputation for tearing apart proposals was infamous. "Jordan," he interrupted, his tone dripping with condescension, Are you suggesting we gamble our entire client base on an untested strategy? Change doesn't seem particularly wise from where I sit. The barb stung, the doubt clawed at him, whispering that he was out of his depth. But as he took a breath, something within him ignited. This wasn't just about a proposal. It was about challenging the structure that had long prioritized safety over innovation. He met Dorrance's gaze evenly. It's about creating value, not only for clients, but for our employees too. If we invest in their growth and well-being, they will, in turn, drive success. A murmur rippled through the group, a slight softening of hardened expressions. He seized the moment, aware it was now or never. We gathered stories from employees, testimonials speaking to how a culture of engagement can lead to greater performance and loyalty. These are not mere sentiments, they are data-backed claims. Jordan indicated toward the projector screen, illuminating the faces of team members who believed in this vision. Each story, underscored by statistical validation, showcased the profound impact their initiative could have. As the room absorbed these narratives, he felt the tide in the atmosphere shift, a burgeoning curiosity replacing the initial skepticism. Moreover, he continued, tapping into his sense of urgency, we can anticipate potential challenges. By preparing effective communication strategies, we can mitigate fears, show our clients and staff that transformation does not signal chaos, but growth. Gradually, board members leaned in, some nodding in reluctant agreement. A pressing tension still held the air's weight, but for the first time he recognized glimmers of hope, reflections of engagement taking root where there once were walls. Yet as the discussion deepened, Jordan felt Dorrance's intense scrutiny re-establish itself, like a predatory animal anticipating its chance. Let's talk about the specifics, Dorrance replied, skepticism resurfacing in his demeanor. What metrics will you show us that demonstrate real, tangible results from this initiative? It's one thing to share stories, quite another to expect us to fund an unproven concept. Jordan's mind raced. While he had adeptly spoken to the emotional facets of his argument, practical numbers had always elicited doubt. The challenge stirred the childhood instinct to retreat, to hide from confrontation. Yet an unfamiliar clarity surged within him. Faced with doubts and a lack of tangible evidence, he realized now was the time to confront those reservations head-on. I may inspire emotion, but I will not ignore the metrics, he stated, immediately transformative in tone. I invite you to review the detailed projections we've prepared, outlining anticipated returns and how implementation will align with our goals. Jordan could feel his pulse steadying, adrenaline sharpening his focus. He wasn't merely defending a concept or engaging in battle. He was carving a space for transformation. This was about trust. But rather than it being about trust in him alone, it had to be about trust in the vision they were collectively shaping. As discussions evolved and tension began to precipitate into constructive dialogue, another vibration tugged at his pocket, a new message. It was the same anonymous source that had reached out earlier, chilling his spine again with its insidious uncertainty. Beware of betrayal from within. Not everyone supports you. He felt the confidence shift within him at the way of potential betrayal as the chatter around him faded. Doubt flickered anew, darker and more wary this time. Who could he really trust as the battle ahead expanded beyond mere corporate politics? Jordan inhaled deeply, knowing the storm was only beginning. As he leaned into the emerging conversation, he could feel the pressure of impending revelations looming large. Would he unravel the threads of potential betrayal, or could he weave them into the very fabric of the change he sought? The critical moment loomed as decisions began to boil at the intersection of courage and trepidation. Jordan felt the tension coiling tighter within him as the meeting progressed. His heart thumped in time with the flickering images on the screen, but he refused to let the growing fear paralyze him. Instead, He harnessed it to prop up his resolve, reminding himself just how critical his position was at this juncture. With Dorrance's scrutiny still like a hawk's gaze upon him, Jordan shifted gears, opting to seize control of the narrative. He opened his folder and drew out a detailed analysis, a collection of figures that told a story of their own, one he had been anxious to present. "I understand your concerns," he began, his voice steady, "but the data we've gathered doesn't merely reflect ambitions, it highlights our potential." He handed out copies of the projected metrics, his palms tingling as he felt eyes darting to the pages. As murmurs spread through the boardroom, Jordan noted the cautious glances exchanged before anyone dared to speak. It was a fragile shift, but it was a shift nonetheless. He leaned in slightly, catching Mr. Dorrance's eye with newfound confidence. "We have opportunities to not only support our current base, but also expand it by becoming a trailblazer in employee engagement." Dorrance's eyebrows furrowed, yet he maintained a hardened poker face. "And if this fails," he countered, "what's your contingency plan, Jordan?" The challenge felt like a test of his mettle. The room held its breath, and Jordan felt the weight of their expectations. "If it fails," he said slowly, "then we learn, we adapt. Every setback becomes a stepping stone towards progress." The board members seemed unconvinced, but there was an undercurrent of respect in the atmosphere. Jordan took a deep breath, recalling his reasons for fighting this fight. It wasn't just abstract concepts or numbers, it was about people, their stories, their struggles, and their potential. "Many of you have known me since my early days here," he added, a hint of vulnerability breaking his formal tone. "I came in as an intern, hungry to prove myself. I've witnessed our company's evolution, but too often we've chosen comfort over courage. It's time to infuse our legacy with the boldness that got us here." He sensed a shift in momentum, energy beginning to pulse through the room. He pressed on. "Let's not forget, manifestations of fear aren't just about financial risks. They're about reputational stakes, too. Engaging deeply with our workforce paves the way for innovation. It's a cyclical investment." For the first time, Dorrance seemed to lower his guard slightly, his critical brow loosening ever so slightly as he processed Jordan's impassioned plea. Conversations among board members buzzed, tentative yet intrigued. Would their own reservations give way to exploration? Suddenly, a sharp vibration in his pocket interrupted the moment. Glancing down, dread slashed through Jordan as he read the new message. "Trust nobody. The countdown to your reckoning has begun." An icy finger of anxiety traced his spine, and he fought against the temptation to let concern cloud his focus. A clean-suited board member named Elsie chimed in. "Perhaps we need to consider frameworks for these ideas, Jordan. How will we measure engagement and its subsequent impact? Moreover, what are other industry leaders doing in this space?" Jordan seized the question as an opportunity. "I'm glad you mentioned that, Elsie," he elaborated, beginning to reference competitive case studies, their successes serving as solid proof that his vision was not just idealism. The discussion unfolded into a collaborative brainstorming session, and Jordan felt a pulse of unity forming, a fragile yet burgeoning alliance. As the meeting drew to its close, Jordan couldn't shake the foreboding feeling that loomed over him. Even as the board seemed to rally around him, the anonymous threats gnawed at his mind, refusing to let him bask in the victory of the moment. Who was behind the betrayal foretold in the messages? Was it someone present, veiled in polite smiles and nods? The realization that trust was a meticulous construction layered with fragility unsettled him. Stepping back into the waiting area after the meeting, he was enveloped in a sense of accomplishment mixed with pervasive insecurity. Would he truly be able to navigate this treacherous terrain of betrayal? His phone vibrated again, the tension within him spiraling as the screen lit up with another message. "Time's running out, Jordan. Look around you. One of them is waiting for the perfect moment to strike." The words struck like a cold wind in an unprepared storm, igniting a fire in his belly. Discovering the traitor among trustworthy faces became paramount, but would he be strong enough to confront the truth? The journey for transformation was only just beginning, and the walls began to close in once more. Jordan leaned against the wall, inhaling deeply to steady his racing heart. The ominous messages were suffocating him, wrapping around his mind like ivy, but he was not going to let fear dictate his actions anymore. Just moments ago, he had rallied the board members to his side, and he had no intention of letting that hard-earned momentum slip through his fingers. His resolve gained traction as he paced the hallway, transforming each pulse of dread into a deliberate focus. Perhaps it was time to take control of his fate beyond the boardroom. The threats had amplified a feeling he kept buried under layers of ambition, mistrust. Had he been so engrossed in the plans for the company's future that he neglected the potential fractures within his own team? He absently scratched at his jaw, the rough stubble grounding him in this moment. Jordan recalled each voice from the meeting, their expressions, their nods, their hesitations. Who could it be? He pulled his phone from his pocket, contemplating whether he should call someone for advice. No, that would only increase the pool of suspicion looming over him. Instead, he needed to dig deeper, to do his own investigative work. Attending to his instincts, he embraced the idea of clandestine inquiries. In the coming days, he resolved to observe interactions more intently, filtering through layers of dialogue at social gatherings and meetings. Perhaps he could reconstruct conversations and tackle misgivings early. The hidden agenda might reveal itself in the subtlest of claims, the faintest change in body language. The strategy would require a duality of presence, playing the collaborative, yet maintaining a distant skepticism. He felt the weight of that mental shift as he embraced the discomfort of uncertainty. Having been on the other side of the business table less than a decade ago, he had learned not only to battle his own fears, but also to navigate the emotional complexities of colleagues. The training he had received would now serve a different purpose. As he walked into his office, snippets of discussions flooded his thoughts. Offices had their own ecosystems, and Jordan had known enough about corporate dynamics to leverage informal settings for clarity. Now, getting insight from lunchroom conversations or coffee breaks would be pivotal. He contemplated the employees he could trust, not merely upon past interactions, but also from their recent comportment. He turned on his laptop, ready to analogize his thoughts into actionable insights. He started jotting down potential shifts in his future strategy, a cohesive design to enhance corporate culture based on his findings in employee engagement. These developments could also help fortify his position against the unseen adversary lurking in the shadows. Just as he began to gather his thoughts, an alert rang through the office, a company-wide notification. The board had announced an upcoming retreat aimed at fostering team cohesion. Immediate concerns buzzed through his mind. This could unveil complex dynamics or establish a breeding ground for discord. Either way, he would have a front-row seat to observe and perhaps intervene. His fingers danced on the keyboard as he outlined potential team-building exercises that were rooted in vulnerability and trust, thereby integrating the very tenets he sought to instill. He could initiate conversations that would lay bare grievances and aspirations. This would not only serve as a business strategy, but a personal mechanism, a crucible in which he could isolate challenges while rallying allies. Before he could react, his phone buzzed once again, and the screen illuminated another anonymous message. "You won't see it coming." As his stomach churned, Jordan realized he was walking a narrow path between collaboration and conflict. The ability to generate meaningful relationships while guarding against hidden threats would become crucial. What game was being played beneath the surface? Who could he truly trust? With a firm grip on his resolve, he resolved to enter the retreat with the knowledge that not only would he be fighting for the company's future, but for his own survival in a web of deceit. The real challenge lay ahead, and the moment of confrontation was fast approaching. Would he unearth the clandestine truth in time? Jordan awoke the morning of the retreat with a restless resolve tangling in his chest. The weight of the anonymous messages persisted, but he brushed aside the fear that threatened to choke his determination. He stared into the mirror, searching for the leader he knew he had become. Each day brought new challenges, but today felt different. Embracing the unknown was a new part of his leadership journey. As he dressed, he mentally rehearsed his strategy. The retreat would serve as more than just an opportunity for team building. It was his stage to uncover truths, to test allegiances, and to foster genuine communication among the employees who could either uplift him or betray him. He visualized the camp setting, everyone mingling, laughter interspersed with tension. The boundaries of the professional world would dissolve here. It would be close to a battleground. By the time he arrived, the sun had risen high, casting a warm glow on the lodge where the retreat would unfold. The employees were bustling in, a mix of familiar faces tinged with apprehension and excitement. Jordan steeled himself, adopting a welcoming demeanor. He made small talk, slipping in subtle inquiries to gauge their true feelings. The facade of friendliness was woven tightly with the thread of suspicion. Teams split into smaller groups for various activities, each designed to showcase individual strengths and reveal hidden dynamics. As he joined a group captained by Ava, the head of marketing, Jordan picked up on a gentle undercurrent of competition lingering just below the surface. The first exercise was deceptively simple, sharing personal anecdotes coupled with professional aspirations. Jordan watched the diverse expressions around him, noting how some spoke with enthusiasm while others retreated behind walls of caution. When it was Ava's turn, she hesitated before revealing a story of a hard-fought campaign that had failed. Sometimes, she paused, searching for the right words, you have to learn from the failures to appreciate success. Her admission sparked a ripple of vulnerability, but there was more than just camaraderie in the air. He sensed the thick veils of mistrust looming nearby. Jordan felt the pull to take a leap, to call upon his own story and demonstrate strength despite uncertainty. My first 6 months leading this team were excruciating, he confessed, recalling moments of self-doubt that lingered like shadows. But it was in embracing those challenges that I learned to forge connections and build trust. Eyes flickered toward him, curiosity piqued. Jordan recognized this as a moment of strength, a window to establish commonality, yet the stirrings of doubt haunted him. Was he too exposed? The afternoon unfolded with increasing intensity, culminating in an outdoor exercise meant to test problem-solving under duress. Teams scrambled to create a raft from available materials. Chaos erupted into manic energy. Jordan positioned himself centrally, orchestrating the efforts while staying attuned to group tensions. Individuals clashed over suggestions while others remained disengaged, hinting at fractures Jordan hadn't anticipated. Midway through the task, Jordan felt a shift. A quarrel erupted between two colleagues, Jack and Elise, who perceived the other's contributions as inadequate. Instead of diffusing the situation, the arguments escalated, unearthing underlying resentment. Tensions surged. Jordan stepped in, channeling his well-honed conflict resolution skills. This isn't just about the raft. It's a reflection of how we manage challenges together. His voice, firm yet empathetic, cut through the noise. Can we not let our frustrations with tasks spill over into our personal connections? As silence settled, he noticed a flicker of realization in Elise's eyes. She nodded, casting a glance toward Jack, who returned an almost imperceptible nod in unspoken understanding. The breakthrough didn't just soothe the ruffled feathers of the moment, it signaled a potential new beginning. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, a sense of clarity enveloped Jordan. He was not just facilitating a retreat, he was tangling with the very fabric of trust that held his team in place. But beneath that clarity loomed a dark reminder, the messages, the threats lurking around every corner. The day had exposed raw truths, but the unsettling thought nagged at him. Was he merely brushing the surface? How deep did the currents of betrayal run? And could he truly trust the alliances he had attempted to forge? As they concluded the day, Jordan looked around at the faces filled with resolve or uncertainty. This was only the first layer peeled away, and he would be back on the hunt for deeper insights. The looming questions remained. Who was orchestrating the threats, and how would they unfold in the days ahead? The moment of clarity was only a prelude to the challenge ahead. Would the real confrontation reveal itself in the darkness, or would he need to navigate the hidden truths himself? The following days were punctuated by a flickering hope for change, interspersed with the shadow of betrayal lurking in every corner. Jordan had returned from the retreat, buoyed by the connections he had begun to forge, yet the unsettling messages gnawed at him like a relentless itch he couldn't scratch. Each scene replayed in his mind, the moment when Elise and Jack reconciled, the way the energy shifted when he spoke in earnest. Yet the whispers of conspiracy remained insistent, echoing the phrase, "Trust nobody." In the aftermath of the retreat, Jordan dedicated himself to nurturing the fragile new relationships while his instincts told him to remain vigilant. He began daily check-ins with different members of the team, opening up dialogues that not only addressed project trajectories, but also personal experiences. He fostered an environment conducive to openness, eager to gather insights and observations, but always mindful of hidden motives. One afternoon, while reviewing the latest data on employee engagement, he found a missed message from Layla, buried under a pile of paperwork. "Let's meet to strategize," she wrote, the weight of urgency palpable in her words. Jordan, heart racing with a mix of anticipation and anxiety, quickly typed a response affirming his willingness to meet. Their conversation had transformed from an opportunity for collaboration into a pivotal moment for truth-telling. When they sat down later that week in a quiet cafe, Layla appeared resolute. "Jordan, I've been gathering intel, both about the initiative and the corporate climate. I think there are factions forming." The chill ran along the length of Jordan's spine. "What are you saying? Are people undermining us?" "Not just people. They're feeding misinformation. It's more organized than we thought." Layla's eyes brimmed with determination as she laid out evidence she had collected. A series of emails, cautiously analyzing their efforts, hints dropped in meetings, and shifting alliances among board members. Each piece of intelligence solidified Jordan's developing theory. It was a calculated response to the change he dared to implement. "Then we need to address this head-on," Jordan declared, galvanizing himself with a mix of adrenaline and fear. Fear could paralyze or motivate the fight within him. He opted for the latter. "What are you thinking?" Layla inquired. "It's time we take control of the narrative surrounding our initiative. We'll confront it publicly," he asserted with determination. Jordan had learned to embrace conflict instead of avoiding it, understanding it as not only a crucible, but as a catalyst for authentic transformation. They devised a bold strategy, an internal presentation for the entire organization where they would re-examine the company's values and reveal the benefits of their initiative through concrete data and testimonials from employees. Layla expressed concern about backlash, though Jordan fixed his gaze firmly on the future. "We'll show them that change doesn't happen in whispers, but in loud declarations of intent." Each day leading up to the presentation carried the weight of fear and excitement intertwined. Jordan could sense the energy in the office evolve. The tension was palpable when he navigated office halls, where whispers carried more than pleasantries. They were tinged with skepticism or support. He understood that moments of truth could forge new paths or shatter ambitions. When the day of the presentation finally arrived, a heavy air blanketed the room. Employees and board members crammed into every space available, murmurs permeating the walls. Jordan stood at the forefront, his heart hammering fiercely in his chest. Yet he felt the tremors of resolve galvanizing him. "Thank you for joining this important conversation," he began, his tone steady. "Today we redefine not just the metrics of success, but our very core values, reaffirming our commitment to inclusivity and accountability." As he laid out compelling statistics that illustrated the impacts of their initiative, higher employee satisfaction, increased productivity, Jordan felt awe wash over him. Those numbers were no longer just statistics. They were the embodiment of all the voices that had long been silenced. In the second half of the presentation, he invited employees to the stage to share their experiences. One by one, individuals from different departments began to peel back their layers of anonymity, revealing their struggles and triumphs, each story stitching them together in a tapestry of humanity that echoed through the room. The atmosphere shifted, palpable hesitance dissolved. Even amidst the roaring applause, moments of deep introspection unfolded behind the confidentiality of those attending. Jordan felt an undercurrent of transformation, overpowering the impending doubts that once clouded the air. This was what leadership could look like. Yet reality crashed back in a tempest when he concluded, bringing a steady calm to the silence that followed. However, change requires vigilance. We've seen pockets of resistance. We must lay claim to our culture, confronting valid questions about trust. It is imperative we do not allow this dialogue to be drowned in noise. The room simmered in a mix of anxiety and anticipation. Jordan recognized the tension between past complacency and present courage, a shared moment of clarity igniting readiness for change. He addressed the whispers, the unseen threats that had previously left him paralyzed with uncertainty. Days transformed into weeks as he and Layla continued to hold crucial conversations with individuals, unearthing hidden concerns. With strategic persistence, they engaged allies, unveiling the facade behind barriers. As more individuals stepped forward, they began rallying behind their movement, burning with passion for reform. Eventually, the tide shifted, and their voices became the undeniable force within the company. Jordan earned respect he hadn't previously known, not only as a leader, but as a person who dared to breach norms. The collective awakening within the organization brought a new wave of energy, coupled with tangible commitments to their growth as a unit. One afternoon, as Jordan left the office, exhausted but exhilarated, he felt a familiar vibration in his pocket. An anonymous message flickered to life. His heart raced, but he quelled the instinct to retreat. Instead, curiosity fueled his determination as he read, "Congratulations, Jordan, but don't settle in just yet. The next phase is where it really begins." An enticing wave of exhilaration washed over him, coupled with an awareness that transformation was not an endpoint, but a commitment to a journey demanding perpetual evolution. He had turned the tides of distrust into a wave of hope. The looming question now rested on the horizon of his mind: what lay in the next chapter of his leadership journey?